All right, Ben, welcome.
Thank you.
You live in the UK, traveled all the way out here to come see us.
Just to see you guys.
In person.
Yeah.
Better or worse than expected?
I mean, you've got the podcast is such a window onto you two guys' personality, and I can just say that in person it just confirms everything that you think these guys are on the podcast.
So your biases are confirmed, which is basically the dream of every NFL coach out there.
Exactly.
Oh man!
Notice how we have a strict body fat restriction on who gets to sit here.
Yes.
Kevin also lean. Ben lean.
See, it's a good job I've done that the weight loss since the end of the season. Then, otherwise you'd have been checking me at the door.
That's a good point. We're basically that picture in the magazine where it shows you like the body types and like pick one. We'll make you look that way. All right, let's go with some questions to get to know you, because quite honestly, you listen to the podcast. We listen to your work every single week because you are the person that has worked so diligently to make PFF data useful with the grading process and being in charge of that. So we don't often interact in a non-football way. So I figured we'd start with some questions that are that don't have to go in the direction of football. So let's start here. How many bets have you placed on NFL games?
On NFL games, I don't actually think I have bet since the very first time when I lost a £30 bet on the Ravens to cover at New England with Kyle Boller a quarterback.
Oh my God! What year is this?
A decade ago.
It was like a decade ago. I think it was like 2006, my second year at university, and I should have realised when the guy who I was betting with was incredibly eager to take the bet. I was just fully in belief in Kyle Boller coming good eventually.
What's sold you on Kyle Boller? So this is obviously before the PFF data collection, all of the stuff that we know now. This is ages ago. What do you know about Kyle Boller at this point?
I mean, it's the whole on the knees thing.
I was going to say
on the knees, throwing through the uprights, and then post football when he went on to become a fireman, he's just that kind of a humble guy.
Boller, 7 touchdowns, 9 picks as a rookie, 13 touchdowns, 11 picks as a second-year player, 11 touchdowns, 12 picks before he took the backup role behind Steve McNair.
Linear progression, though. Linear progression. Everybody will get better.
Completion percentage went from 52 to 56 to 58.
Exactly. So if he just kept playing.
Yeah. Imagine where his completion percentage would be now.
100. It probably would be maxed out.
It's funny that because I immediately thought of the from the knees through the uprights thing with Kyle Boller, and I realized he went to Cal, right?
Yeah.
That's really the only two things I know about Kyle Boller. And now, you then went on to become a massive part of a company that basically works so hard so that we don't have to use those ridiculous things to measure how good a guy might be at the NFL. And yet still, in the NFL today, we fall prey to this exact same issue. It's amazing. Next question. Your favorite beverage?
Ooh.
Can be alcoholic
or non-alcoholic.
So I used to say your favorite cocktail, but I've received answers like beer. And so now at this point, I'm just opening it up to all beverages.
All right. Okay. Difficult choice. I generally just go with water. I'm boring like that.
I think that's a great answer. I think that's the best answer we've had so far.
Yeah.
Fred Godelli was close. He said Coors Light. But I would say,
which is a different. It's water at a different stage of life. Yeah.
The only step closer to water you can get than that is Bud. So
yes, there you go. All right, next question. Non-NFL podcast that you listen to.
Favorite?
Don't say the forecast, because that means that we've been getting off script too much lately.
I mean, when you spend 10 minutes talking about the Montreal Tampa Bay Devil Rays, are you really a football podcast?
You deserve that.
Fair.
Serious answer: a history podcast by James Holland, who's a English World War II historian, and Al Murray, who is a comedian who's passionate about history. It's called "We Have Ways of Making You Talk."
Oh wow.
So that's an interesting sort of new weekly podcast where they go through various bits of World War II.
That's really cool. Is it all, I'm assuming that because they're good historians, they look at it from multiple perspectives, or is it mostly from a kind of British perspective?
Multiple perspectives,
Okay.
yeah. But
History is fascinating. I'm sure you're a fan of football history, so I assume regular world history is up your alley too.
Yeah, I mean, to the degree that I have time for it.
You're watching a WNBA game right now. I should know.
I'm not. I can confirm that I'm not.
So long as I have time for it between WNBA prospecting that I do. I think history is great. One of the moments that I remember from my childhood is watching the very famous Civil War documentary by
Ken Burns.
Ken Burns, yes. And that was amazing. So I assume it's a great podcast. Might have to check it out. Let's go with this one to wrap it up. One meal that if you had to eat one meal for the rest of your life, you would eat, and one meal that you wouldn't eat to save your life.
The one meal that I'd be happy to eat for the rest of my life probably be spaghetti bolognese. It's the one pasta dish that doesn't come with cheese on it, and I don't have to say to the waiter, can you please take cheese off of that?
Nice.
It's sort of light enough but heavy enough that you don't feel weird eating it in the middle of winter or the middle of summer.
Okay.
So you got the flexibility there.
Smart.
Uh,
And you actually mentioned a specific pasta. We've received pasta as an answer twice, and that
pasta's
is...
like a whole range of
That's-
food. You can't just
yeah.
say pasta.
legitimately an entire, like cross-section of foods.
Yeah. A meal that I wouldn't eat to save my life, probably anything containing shellfish. I did biology
Really?
as my degree course, therefore I know what most shellfish eat, and I don't want to eat what they're eating.
Yeah,
That's
that's a
fascinating.
good point.
You a shellfish guy?
I've only.
Not a seafood guy, are you?
I like salmon quite a bit.
That's true.
And I like most fish. Shellfish not very often.
Yeah.
I could probably live off of lobster and shrimp and crab. And I kind of know what they eat. Yeah. I just don't care. I'm the same way with foie gras, which I was in California a couple weeks ago. I went to one of my favorite restaurants, and one of my favorite things had been taken off the menu, and it has foie gras in it. And I was like, what the hell? And they go, yeah, it just got outlawed again in California. And I'm like, of course. Of course. Fighting the big battles in California.
Yep.
That's what we do.
The important things.
All right, let's move into the MVP discussion. So the Westgate Las Vegas printed some odds for MVP yesterday. You can go check them out on Twitter. They're everywhere. Or you can go to Vegas and head to the Westgate. The favorites are not surprising. Pat Mahomes, 4-1. Rodgers, 8-1. Luck, 8-1. Wentz and Breeze, both 10-1. Brady, 12-1. Rivers and Wilson, 14-1. Roethlisberger, Ryan, Mayfield, 25-1. Jared Goff, Cam Newton, 60-1. These aren't necessarily in order. The highest non-QB appears to be Zeke at 60-1.
Better odds than his quarterback.
Better odds than his quarterback, which I think says it all. Dak at 100-1. From my perspective, when I'm betting on the MVP, if I were to bet on the MVP, taking the favorites is it's kind of like playing betting on a golf tournament. The favorites are going to be overpriced because they're way better, but there's so much variance that goes on in these small samples that there's just no point in taking the favorites. But I'm going to make you guys pick. If you have to pick one guy that is, let's cut it off at Brady. So 12-1 or better, who are you going to take? Mahomes, Rodgers, Luck, Wentz, Breeze, or Brady? Eric, you go first.
Man, let's go Breeze.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Reason?
I think that they sort of saw what happened a season ago where he tanked at the end of the season. I think that they'll probably do things to avoid that circumstance happening again. And it's like his last chance, right? So, plus they're good odds. I think 10-1. Honestly, Breeze, how far, he wasn't that far away from Mahomes last season, right? 4-1 to 10-1. So I think, just sort of go by the prior of last season, and Breeze is probably a good choice here.
What do you think, Ben?
I would probably lean in towards Brady, even though Brady tends to get in the MVP running he's so great, he's won it so many times before, though he hasn't.
Like Peyton.
Exactly. You got that bias against him. But just sort of trying to play the odds. He's in a division where none of the other 3 teams are going to rise up and steal wins off them. You know the Patriots are going to get 10, 11, 12 wins, so he's going to be in that mix. And I just don't see Brady going out quietly.
I like both of those. In fact, both of those were guys that I was thinking about. To me, it's like you're trying to pick almost the winner of a popularity contest. Mahomes won it last year. People don't like to give back-to-back awards. Rodgers, the new system in there, I'm not sold on LaFleur. It's Adams and Valdez Scantling. Not stoked on that.
I mean, Rodgers, to me, the fact that he's second here is egregious.
It's hilarious.
You'd presume it's entirely built on the narrative of revenge comeback tour.
And just Aaron Rodgers is on TV more than any other NFL quarterback.
Yep.
And it's not even close. Andrew Luck at 8-1, I also think is a little bit much. However, the comeback player of the year, the whole narrative around, and he's a great guy, the media will buy into that very quickly. The same with Carson Wentz, who is coming off of injury, was so close. He almost deserved it a season ago. Let's give it to him. So I like Breeze and Brady a little bit more. I think Breeze is great, but Wentz at 10-1, I think he'll get a ton of media coverage. He was so good. If he gets back on track, I guess because he's 10-1, I take it. But I like Breeze and Brady a lot for those reasons. The
question with Wentz is he going to buck the trend that he's had and actually play all 16 games?
Well, and the year that he was this is how interesting this conversation is, because he played better last season than he did in 2017 process-wise. No one was ever going to talk about him as the MVP last year, but people were talking about him as he was in 2017. So this is really, if you're going to bet Wentz, you're betting on are the Eagles going to be good, right? As opposed to, is Wentz actually going to play up to his standards? So that was an interesting one. What about the long shots? Let's say...
I know who you're taking. I was going to say, forget long shots if you have to bet a non-QB first. So we'll go long shots in a second overall.
Yeah.
A non-QB that you have to take. Who are you going with? I'm going to go first this time.
Go ahead.
Because I would go with Zeke Elliott. And here's why. It's the Cowboys. They're going to overpay him, and that means they're going to overfeed him.
Yeah.
He's going to get 400 million touches. They are probably going to be, not the worst team. But if they happen to get over the hump, it'll probably be because their offensive line starts to play sort of, really, really well like they did in Dak's rookie year, allowing Dak to be a little bit better, and that will allow Zeke to score a crap ton of touchdowns. So it's all about touchdowns. We know this.
Yep.
And he basically will have the Todd Gurley year, but all the way through from last season.
Yeah, my non-quarterback is at 100-1, Mitch Trubisky of the Chicago Bears.
200-1.
200-1. Sorry, I think those are great odds to give somebody who can throw the ball at times too. So I love that one. If I'm going to pick a second, I'm going to go with Josh Allen. And I don't care which one it is. I think it's either quarterback Bills or edge player Jaguars. I think they're equally likely.
That was brilliant. Ben?
I'm going to steal your logic of it's all about touchdowns.
It is.
And I'm going to steal your logic of it's all about touchdowns and then feed off of my reason why I doubted my bet on Brady of the anti-Brady bias and say one of his running backs, so James White or Sony Michel, could rack up some touchdowns without Rob Gronkowski as the red zone threat.
Sony Michel's 100-1, by the way. Sony Michel has better odds than Mitch Trubisky.
The same odds as Jameis Winston, who's an actual quarterback.
Yep.
That's hilarious. All right, overall long shots. If you actually had to place a bet, where would you go?
Jameis.
Mr. Eager.
Jameis.
Just go ahead and talk about him.
Jameis Winston, my guy.
Can you please expound on that?
Well, I think he led the NFL last season in percentage of positively graded throws. He's got the cards in his deck. They have Bruce Arians there. Bruce Arians made Carson Palmer, who granted has had a far better career than Jameis to this point, but very similar composition-wise.
Yep.
He put him in position to succeed. I think he could put Jameis in position to succeed.
Yeah, just needs a little bit of a lift from his coaching staff.
God damn
Since he's probably not able to take an Uber anymore.
Yahtzee.
Benjamin?
How long are long shot odds?
I mean, anyone that's, past 25 to 1. I mean, I actually don't even think it has to be a long shot. Just what's your favorite bet?
My favorite play in there would probably be
Kyle Bowler's not in here.
It's a disappointment. I mean, they've missed a trick there. They've got Tariq Cohen and Zach Ertz on there, but I can't put money on Kyle Bowler. I would be looking at the 3 guys at 25 to 1s as guys who I think are good bets. Matt Ryan's shown he's got that upside in the past. He's still got Julio to throw to. Ben Roethlisberger, all right, you got the drama of Antonio Brown gone this offseason, but he's still got a strong offensive line in front of him. He's still got weapons to throw the ball to.
And
James
if he
Conner
plays well, it's like you've done it in spite of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think Roethlisberger's great. I probably wouldn't go with Ryan just because I think it's so hard to repeat.
Yeah.
He won it just a couple of years ago. I actually kind of like Mayfield at 25 to 1, but the 2 that I like the most, and I'm kind of torn between which one I think is the best, Deshaun Watson at 60 to 1, and Jimmy G, the chosen one. Now, the problem with Jimmy G's at 80 to 1 is that they will find any excuse to give him comeback player. But anytime that I can get Jimmy G at 80 to 1, which is the same price at which you can get Kirk Cousins, I'm gonna take that. And
Kirk Cousins.
When he comes back to redeem all of our sins that we've had, I think that's worthy of being the most valuable player.
So if Trubisky, when's the last time a non-quarterback won the MVP? Was it 2012 with Adrian Peterson?
Has to be, right?
Okay. So Trubisky wins it. It'll be pretty remarkable.
That's great because I've gotten a lot of hate for the Bears, and I can't be said to. Here's a legitimate question: would you rather take Trubisky at 200 to 1 or Cohen at 300?
200 to 1. Come on, Trubisky. This.
Would you rather take Trubisky or Leonard Fournette? They both have the same odds, by the way. Other players that have the same odds as Trubisky, according to Vegas: Philip Seymour Lindsay, amazing. Who else is it?
Devontae Freeman is at 200 to 1.
Freeman is 200 to 1.
Derrick
Aaron
Henry
Jones is 200 to 1.
Wow.
Aaron Jones is 200 to 1. Leonard Fournette, Julian Edelman, Juju. What would it take? Here's the other last question I had, because I think the receivers having an amazing year. The guy that kind of got closest was Calvin Johnson.
Yep.
What would it take for a receiver to win the MVP, given that his quarterback's probably going to play well? Like, how does that happen?
Yeah, well, and I think Kevin was saying this on Twitter. It's very hard to envision that happening. You'd almost have to have a situation where a quarterback got hurt and his backup came in and played the other 8 games. They split the season basically.
That's what I was
and then
too.
They were both think about Winston and Fitzpatrick last season. If Tampa Bay would have won, and Mike Evans was brilliant, there could have been an opportunity there.
Yeah, either that or you have to have the extreme market share kind of thing that Megatron had that 2011 season, I think it was, where I think he was further up in the MVP running than Stafford would have been, even with Stafford throwing for 5,000 yards, which is automatic contention.
Right. I was trying to think of, because part of it is also, it's hard to win the MVP when people have already sort of written the book on you. And I think that was Stafford's thing, is we already know he's sort of a median-ish quarterback, so we can't escalate him that high. So I was trying to think of someone that sort of fits that. And Antonio Brown with Derek Carr is interesting to me because he's got to give Antonio Brown 700 targets. If he throws
for
the ball
them to get along.
That too. But Antonio Brown's the type of guy where he's so well respected for his route running, his ability to get open, to make things happen, to make tough catches, that I could see a situation where he is just far and away more impressive than Derek Carr is, given that if Derek Carr doesn't throw to him, he's probably throwing it into the ground right in front of him, which is basically what his past
They signed Tyrell Williams. He's a good football player. There's going to be probably some although they got rid of Jared Cook, so yeah, but I do agree. I think Antonio Brown strikes me, but the problem is the Raiders are going to be beige.
Right, they're going to be terrible.
So it's not the opportunity for him to stand out. It'll be one of those situations where it'll be like when Alex Rodriguez won the MVP for a last place Texas team. This isn't baseball, so this is never going to happen.
Well, that's why I like Roethlisberger too, because this is really a question of projecting how well that player is going to produce stats that people look at. And then secondarily, how confident are you that that team is going to not just do well, but exceed expectations? Because that's one of Brady's issues too, is that they always do great, but their expectations are always super high. The Steelers are not the favorite to win their own division this year. So they, them just winning 10 games and him having an amazing season, if Brady and the Patriots win 10 games, they're like, well, you can't give him the MVP. They failed this year.
Well, that takes you back to like 2015 where Palmer and Newton were the two people vying for MVP because in 2014, the Panthers were like 7-8-1. And in 2014, Palmer tore his ACL, had to sit out the last two. So they kind of came out of nowhere. I agree. The hard part is when people already expect you to be awesome. That's probably going to be Mahomes' issue too. Mahomes, like when your starting point is 50 touchdown passes and you throw 35, you might not even you could lead the league in
failure.
I mean, there was a year that Russell Wilson led the league in touchdown passes. I think it was like 2016, and no one gave him second thought for MVP because they already expected him to be good. And he had a couple crappy games, so people just like default to this idea that he wasn't great.
Well, Russ Wilson's biggest issue is that he doesn't play running back. All right, MVP conversation is closed. Let's go to the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's the team that we're going to recap / look forward to this season. The Steelers, it's such a drama-filled team, and they're always contrasted with the Patriots. And I think that's so funny because the Patriots have a lot of drama too. We talked about this actually last week. I made the comparison that the Patriots handle drama like the Bulls did with Jordan. They just don't talk about it, and that kills the story. And the Steelers can't stop talking about it. Like Tomlin has a way of trying to not say anything, but really just saying a ton. And he has such a profound way of speaking. And then of course Antonio Brown can't literally stop Instagramming his life. Le'Veon Bell can't find clothes in his house for all of the women that he has inside of it. So they had their own set of issues, and yet somehow they seem to put together good seasons. And this season, it almost seems like a lot of that drama should be off to the side. Does that help them this year?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Last season their over-under was 10.5. We had them at 9. It wasn't a team that we really discussed as an under candidate. But I do think this is a great example of how hard it is to win 10 games in the NFL, how hard it is to win 11 games in the NFL. Because, the Steelers, they got off to a slow start, right? And then there was the drama with Bell. There was the drama with Brown at times, being overshadowed by Smith-Schuster. And then they had this stretch, right? They won 5 or 6 games in a row. Yep. They were 7-2-1 or something like that.
7, I think, right?
Yeah,
6 in a row.
Yeah, 6 in a row. They were 7-2-1, and then they had that stinker in Denver, right? And then and it all sort of fell apart. And then they came back and beat the New England Patriots at home. But again, they still couldn't even get over that 10-win hump. When you're looking at handicapping teams in the future that have these double-digit win totals, right? The models love those unders, right? And we are Steelers story franchise, right? It's going to be hard to bet this under. But they oftentimes pay out just basically by how hard it is. And I think it's for that reason. You can be the most talented team in the league at receiver. You can have a talented running back. You can have a great offensive line, which they had. You can have a passable defense, a decent head coach, and then chemistry issues cause that, right? Everything has to go right to win 11 or more games, and the Steelers are a great example. When a couple things go wrong, it's not assured.
Ben, the Steelers offense, a lot of facets that really, over the past couple of years, have made it go. Bell was attributed a lot of the success. What is something that we don't talk enough about maybe with the Steelers offense that you think is a really impressive component?
In terms of how you guys would look at the offensive line, it's maybe not the individual most valuable difference-making thing, but I think the stability that they have had, the consistency they've had there, where they've got some very talented individual players, but it's just the way that whole offensive line plays together as greater than the sum of its parts is what is, to me, one of the big reasons why James Conner was able to come in and basically be Le'Veon Bell last year. Yeah. You sort of had the dichotomy in the Steelers last year of the running back truthers who say that running backs do in fact matter, saying, well, they missed the playoffs because they didn't have Le'Veon Bell.
Fact.
But then also playing into the
Two things occurred.
Yep. Also playing into the running backs don't matter crew.
Right.
James Conner comes in and he's at the very least 95% of Le'Veon Bell. And I think the offensive line's a big part of that.
Ben,
even with
he fumbled away game 1, and had he not,
this is true. There's the difference. Yep. That's the difference completely made there.
Yeah, I mean, and the interesting thing is that we look at the most valuable players in terms of WAR. You know, Connor was extremely productive last year, and yet he doesn't make this list of players who are the most valuable. You obviously go Big Ben. AB and Juju are basically equally as valuable a season ago, which I think goes against the narrative. They have Tuitt and Hayward on the inside of their defense, Hilton and Hayden in the back end. You have to get a ways before you get to Connor. And again, that was like the whole thing we wrote about, you know, Le'Veon Bell previously is like, I mean, he's a great football player, but he doesn't move the needle all that much.
Nope.
And so getting rid of him certainly didn't affect them from an offensive perspective. I mean, you're talking about a team. I'm trying to find. They were 5th in the NFL in EPA gain per play. They were a top 5 offense, and even though they were 15th on the ground in EPA, that's still an average offense. Being 8th through the pass allows you to get sort of up there, amongst the NFL leaders. And that was when Big Ben wasn't really all that good last season.
No, he wasn't. And a couple things from that list that are really interesting. The first is our buddy, Mr. Hilton in the slot. Was he a 5th-round pick, 6th-round pick, or something like that?
Yep.
But he played the slot in college, and it's something that we've talked a lot about, which is if you know what a guy played in college, play him there in the pros.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because it's the data on players that make switches is just not great, and Mike Hilton is a testament to that. Has been very solid in the slot for them, and they have really struggled. There's some linchpins to their defense that have, Ryan Shazier was one of them. He goes out and you replace one of the most athletic linebackers with like a random guy from this office, and it all of a sudden doesn't work quite so well. Hayden has been injured, and the rest of their coverage guys, on the outside have been pretty bad. And now I look at the wide receiving core, and it's like, okay, you get rid of Antonio Brown. Juju's fine, but my question is, are they going to find other players to throw the ball to? Because James Washington was not great last season, and it's a big drop-off when you take away a guy and you replace him with below replacement level.
Yeah, and they lost. Jesse James was not a great tight end, but he's gone. He went to Detroit. James Washington was their least valuable player a season ago. So he wasn't exactly what you wanted out of a high pick at wide receiver. They did. Vance McDonald though was a pretty solid tight end a season ago, and you wonder do they finally have this replacement that they've always sort of wanted for Heath Miller that they've missed for all that time. So there could be some places, and then of course James Conner out of the backfield. There could be some places where they go to replace AB, but AB was still really good last season despite. All the narrative surrounding it.
Well, is Deontay Johnson?
Well, that's who Renner and Steve are big on because of his route running. His athletic profile is fairly similar to Brown as well. I mean, that's a big question. If you think you can if you think you can isolate the 6th round receiver from the MAC and sort of get that pipeline running,
right,
then I think you've got the whole thing cracked. If you think you've got that, maybe this is the year Dante Moncrief finally breaks out and sustains for a full season.
I mean,
it could not be.
I actually like Moncrief. I think he's been undervalued. What's interesting is the Steelers. No team is really good at drafting. But the Steelers have managed to draft some really good receivers over the years. I mean, going back a ways, right? So, maybe there's something to that. Randy Fiechner, a guy that we really liked last year, their screen game was incredibly effective. Top 5 in yards per screen play, up there with the Kansas City Chiefs and Andy Reid, who are always talked about. That really helped Roethlisberger out quite a bit, made him look probably a little bit better than his actual play.
That's a great point.
Indicated. Look, currently 9.5 is the Vegas total. A few more people on the under, if I'm reading this correctly.
Yeah, the under's minus 125, or the over's plus 105.
So I think that makes sense intuitively. Putting you on the spot, over or under 9.5, Ben?
I've got to put my own actual money on it.
You don't. This isn't Kyle Bowler. No pounds on the line here.
I would be inclined on the balance of probabilities to lean towards the under, just because I think the AFC North's a more crowded division this year, and I think it could realistically be sort of the AFC version of what the NFC South has been for years, where everybody knocks each other out, and you could win that division with 9 wins this year.
Yeah, I think that's what the numbers bear out. I mean, we like Pittsburgh as the favorite to win that division still, like a little over 40. But again, that's what shows you what's happened in this division, where the balance of power has shifted. You know, Baltimore's a team as well that's like, you know, we're not quite sure about Lamar Jackson. They won the division a season ago, and then Cleveland's obviously ascending. So, you know, there is a good chance they could simultaneously win that division and get under this total. Which is why, sort of to change subjects, the plus 190 to win the AFC North is, you know, they only have to win the AFC North 35 or more % of the time to break even on this bet. So I kind of like that one more than I like, you know, their win total, because there's a bigger payout. And, you know, I think that the two happen probably more or less at the same time, and they're good odds.
Yes, I agree with you. I would also, if I gun to my head, would go under, but may or may not have investment in them winning their division. Who would you take right now to win that division? Like, if you were just handicapping it.
I would probably lean towards the Steelers, just because I've got the same opinion of the Browns this year, admittedly at a higher level, but similar sort of thinking that I had last year. Where going into last year, I was asked by a Browns fan on Twitter, you know, what do you see
there's a few of those.
There is a few of those. What do you see the Browns win total as this year?
Yeah.
And I don't actually know whether I replied to him. I may just have sort of mentioned it to Gordon or a couple of other people in PFF in passing, where my thought process was, I don't know what their win total will be. I think they'll be a 500 team after they win their first game, but I don't know when they'll win their first game. And I think the Browns, it's sort of a similar. I think they've got the capabilities to win the division this year, but I don't know whether they'll figure it all out and put it all together. Just because they're coming from so far back, I don't think you can put the same expectations on it. So to answer the question, long-winded, I would lean towards the Steelers as the team I'd pick this year of the four. I
think your intuition's good, right? There are fewer teams that are like the Rams than are like the Vikings, right? Where you have this pop-up year and you just continue to roll it over and you continue to get better.
Yep.
Usually, like I always think about the Falcons when they got Matt Ryan. They went from terrible to division winner, basically, to 500. And then they had their year, then they figured it out, right? Regression sort of always seems to hit these teams that have a pop-up season. So, like, and the same thing with Chicago. Like, I don't think Chicago is going to stink. I think they're not going to go from 12 to 13 wins. I think they're going to go from 12 to 9, right? And I think the same thing's true with Cleveland.
Well, they're not playing a single quarterback, so that's tough.
It's really difficult. So I agree with you. I think Pittsburgh really is like Pittsburgh's like the one real value I see in these division odds, where it's not like a team like the Lions who are like plus 600. I think the Steelers really are a good value here.
With you guys there. This brings us to, we've been doing a segment on the show where we rewatch a game. We did the Kansas City New England games last week. That was a lot of fun. Ben, thoughts on a game for this upcoming week that we should rewatch?
Well, I could go for the Steelers-Browns Week 1 game and just make you guys watch an overtime game. Sort of.
We don't have to listen to you. I'm just asking for suggestions, because you have a different view. We sit next to each other and yell at each other all day.
Yeah,
I like your opinion.
I think the Steelers would be an interesting team to look at.
Yeah, I agree.
And I would lean towards, just so that no, this wasn't. This was the end of Fitzmagic. I would say that the Week 3 Monday Night Football game against the Bucks could be an interesting one to go for, because that's kind of the game that almost saved the Steelers season in Week 3. Because if they go down to 0-2-1,
that's right,
they're staring down in the deep hole. And the Bucks were in a position, I think, where was that a game they could have gone to 3-0?
They should have gone to 3-0. Yeah.
That's a good one. The Steelers have some really interesting games. They have that Chargers game on Sunday Night Football. Maybe we watch both those. The bigger the sample size, the more you learn.
The only thing that I don't like about watching like a Bucks game with like Fitzpatrick is this just not going to happen again? So like, there's no. But I agree.
Sad.
You don't have faith for him in Miami this year?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think he'll play a few games.
You're wearing your Dolphins color shirt. Yeah. All right, we'll decide. It's between. We'll do a Steelers game, and I think those two, either Bucks or Chargers. The Chargers game was wacko, totally crazy.
Wacko.
All right, we're gonna close out with this. I usually rant and rave about people at the gym that annoy me, and people are probably tired of that. So now that we have a guest on, you're a runner.
Yep.
So either a story or two of running things, either in the UK or maybe.
Okay, I'll go with two observations.
Nice.
From my running down by
That's a nice way to put it.
Down by the riverfront in Cincinnati this week so far.
Call those the banks.
Yeah. So on the positive side, even going for a run at 6 a.m., it's nice and toasty and warm, and I'm not thinking, I don't really want to be out in this. It's freezing cold like it is early in the morning in the UK. So that's nice and pleasant, nice view. Water's a little bit brown. I'm not about to jump in it, so I'll live with that. But then on the downside, everything just looks a little bit scruffy with all these bird scooters that people just... I mean, if you leave them in a nice, neat row by the side of the road, kind of get that, kind of nice. But you just leave them all over the floor for people to run around. It's just inconsiderate. And then, it's the inconsiderate other runners that you have that you seem to have in the US. Like when I'm going around for a run, I like to show that I'm not really sweating it and pushing it all the way, so I can sort of wave and say hi to people as I'm jogging past. Responses have been mixed the first 2 mornings. I'll just put it that way.
What's the best? How many people have you said hi to, and how many people have actually given you at least courteous response?
About 50% actually acknowledge the hello or the wave, and about 25% give a courteous return response.
That seems to be the American way.
I would expect more from the runners union.
That's bad. That's really bad. I mean, I guess that goes in line with bird scooters just lying around, right?
Yeah, this is
I
true.
saw a bird scooter on fire in a trash can
Come
the
on.
other day. So that tells you all you need to know.
Just when I was wandering out at lunch.
Ethan to laugh at that one almost.
I mean, what are you doing with your life? You're like, you know what? This thing's on fire.
Set this thing's fire.
Throw it
I was
in the
just
trash.
wandering out for my lunch now, and there's someone wandering around with the handlebars taken off. He's just holding the top of the spindle.
Those things are very convenient, although a lot of people, clearly didn't have a Razor scooter as a kid because they can't ride them to save their lives, which is really funny. And a lot of them people treat poorly. And so like the brakes aren't great, or the accelerators like sticky.
Yeah.
So I try to avoid riding them if I can, because I think they're fairly dangerous. Running around them, also dangerous. So don't do that. Now you're the bad guy. You're the person that's complaining about working out. I have no complaints.
I'm gonna have to be careful for the next few days in Cincinnati.
Someone's gonna find you. All right, that does it for us. It was a pleasure to have you on.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for having me.
One of the really great people at PFF, and we are honored to have you
Yes.
on the podcast. See you guys.